Scott, who became a leadership coach after her MS diagnosis. She's made it her mission to help those living with chronic disease live joyful, purposeful lives. She believes in the power of meaningful conversations and celebrating all our victories without toxic overpositivity. She's a big proponent of mindfulness and self-compassion and how it can transform us. So listen in. Well, Rebecca, I'm so excited to have you here with me because I just so enjoyed meeting you, getting to know you, and learning about the wonderful work that you do to help the MS community, but really just the chronic disease community as a leadership coach. So I had so much fun talking to you that I thought it would be really fun
Thank
for us
you.
to do an interview so that other
Yeah,
people can learn about you and your work.
awesome. I'm very excited to be here.
Great. So I always like to start with your diagnosis story, but I always like to also
Mhm.
put a spin on it so that you could
Okay.
tell us, so you can start thinking like a functional medicine doctor, like what were the events leading up to your diagnosis in the previous month, 6 months, years, couple of years? Were there things that were happening where you think maybe were clues that an MS diagnosis was coming?
I have never thought of it as leading up to my diagnosis before. However, that so my symptoms started showing up in I guess February because it was Super Bowl Sunday. And I remember that because I was grocery shopping with my husband and I had to pee and I had to pee all the time then. And I couldn't figure out what was going on, which of course can be MS related. So I ran to the bathroom and my feet were numb. So that's at a grocery store. So Super Bowl Sunday.
Yeah.
Preceding that, my grandmother died, and I didn't know my grandmother very well, so that wasn't that big of a deal. But it was a hit to our family because it always is when a matriarch or patriarch dies. But one of my best friends from high school committed suicide right before Christmas, um, which destroyed me. It still destroys me a little, even thinking or talking about it. And then I had a cousin who died. So all of that happened in a month and a half, or a couple of months before this. Um,
Wow.
my symptoms showing up. Yeah. Yeah. And I
Mm.
was in a terrible job that I hated. Like it really was not a great time in my life then.
Yeah.
And then, mystery symptoms. What fun.
Well, I mean, I would say that that's immense, immense emotional stress.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So this is why I always ask, because if you can identify that, then maybe that's a clue to what you can do to help bring the immune system to a better place, right? So we know
Mhm.
stress is not a friend for those of us with
Yeah,
MS. So thank you for sharing that. And
of
I'm always
course.
curious to know, how did you cope in those early days? Like, what were the things that gave you strength or hope to move forward?
Denial, denial, denial. That was I spent a weekend-ish crying about it. It was around my husband's birthday when I actually got my diagnosis, and we were throwing a party. So I just did my party throwing thing, pulled one person aside and told them, and that was it. Um, and then I started, telling friends, my family, like my nuclear family that I grew up with, they all were aware of what was going on and
Mhm.
waiting for news and things like that. But otherwise, I just kind of like unfolded it slowly to
Yeah.
different people. And I dealt with needles because I was diagnosed in the early days. So I was injecting myself every other day. Um, so what I did was I poured a lot of my stress about my diagnosis into stress
Mhm.
about
Mhm.
this very practical issue I had to deal with, which was learning to give myself injections.
Yeah.
Um, and I think I wrapped most of my feelings about the diagnosis up into, again, this very practical thing. Like this is a problem I can solve.
Yeah.
And barring that every other day reality of jabbing a needle into my body, I didn't have a lot of MS symptoms at the beginning, like until I realized that the having to pee all the time was probably MS related. Um, I mostly was living a regular life, so I didn't see much reason to deal with any of it. Yeah, so that's how I did it, and it's not really coping. It's more of a, shoving it into the closet while the company comes over, and then we'll deal with that later. That's sort of a thing.
I think that's a really natural reaction actually to information that's so big, but so vague at the same time, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I can, just knowing what I know about you, I almost have this picture of you because you were an event planner, so you're like, let's do my husband's party and then
Yep.
I'll compartmentalize and then I'll deal with my emotions later. So another very,
Yeah.
common technique, right?
Yeah.
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 And it's okay. It's just how we cope until we figure out better ways. And there are better ways to cope. So tell me about your pivot. How did you change what you were doing and the work that you're doing now?
Yeah, well, this was another case of a kind of, we'll deal with this later, because as you said, I was an event planner at the Folger Shakespeare Library here in DC for over a decade. And my boss was just the best, and she gave me every possible accommodation. It was terrific. We had bathrooms moved in the building. We did all kinds of things for me over the years. But eventually, my body was like, girl, no, you can't do this anymore. I know you walk with a cane, but like the cane is not enough. I was falling at work. I got injured a couple of times, which was embarrassing on top of the fact that it's a little bit dangerous. So it was like, okay, well, this has to stop. And the first step, again, another kind of, we'll deal with this later. This is an interesting pattern, Dr. Susan. Was I got a contract job that lasted a year somewhere. And it was a perfectly fine job, but it lasted a year. And when it was up, I was like, well, damn, I don't know what I should do now. Like I got so much meaning and joy out of this old job. So I threw it up to Facebook and said, Facebook, what should I do? And my high school English teacher, who I had been friends with for years and years, had started a leadership consulting firm based out of New Zealand that was international, and they needed somebody to help with administration in the US. So I interviewed for that job and got that job. And it was kind of like, well, if I can work from home and work with interesting people, maybe I don't need all the other stuff. Maybe just supporting people doing good work will be enough for me. And then I realized I want to do this work. And I denied it and was like, no, I don't want to be a coach. Coaching, that feels like a racket. These people are lovely, but it's kind of a racket. And eventually I really listened to myself and said yes, and went to Georgetown, and that's what I've been doing now. And it's marvelous.
Isn't that funny? You just said it was marvelous, but maybe it was not the thing you wanted to do.
Right,
mindset,
exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
Being open to possibilities that things could be different. I have a story like that too. I didn't want to do hospice and palliative care and integrative medicine. I wanted to be in the OR, doing numerous work. But I love what I do now. So, I call it the gift of MS. It's like, okay, there's some good that's come of it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I always say I will never be grateful, because I feel like full on grateful, because I feel like I could have had a fabulous life as an event manager in Washington, D.C. It could have been wonderful. But damn it, this life is really good. So there you go.
There you go. Surprise.
Exactly.
So tell me now about your current work and how you support people with chronic disease and MS.
Yeah. So I don't only work with people with chronic disease, but I do have a handful of clients that fall into that category. And what I love about coaching is that coaching is about looking forward. Therapy is often about like being in the present and looking back to see like, well, what do we need to deal with that's already happened so that we can live better now? Whereas coaching is like, all right, you're here now, like let's dream about what you could do and how you might get there.
I love how
And
you just put that. Like, let's just dream and imagine what's possible.
yeah, and sometimes it's nowhere near that sexy. Sometimes it's like I have an employee who is driving me nuts and I don't know what to do with them. So let's talk about strategies for that. And that's fine. We can deal with practical things too, but like the good stuff of coaching is where are we now and where might we get to? And the reason why I'm so passionate about doing this with people with chronic illness and especially people with MS and just the incredible unpredictability that we deal with in the day to day and in the month to month and in the decades, who knows what our bodies are going to be doing in the future. So it's acknowledging like, we don't know. And what can we put in place now to make it likely that we're going to be able to get where we want to go? So it's that simultaneous, I don't know, it's a push and pull of like, oh, here's where we are. Like, this can be heavy. This can be hard. And when we look ahead, again, who knows? And like, but what could we do? Like, what will give us the most joy or meaning or whichever of those positive words resonates the most for you?
Yeah. So it's like dreaming and imagining what's possible, and then putting a plan in place. Right.
Absolutely.
And, most people may be able to do that on their own, but I would imagine with a coach, it's much more accelerated and you have a better roadmap to follow rather than having to figure it out on your own. Yeah.
Well, and there certainly is. My primary job is to pull that roadmap out of whoever I'm talking to, because that, who knows what's going to work. Again, so much unpredictability in the world, in our bodies, in all kinds of places. So like figuring out, all right, you respond well to checklists. Let's work with the checklist for a week and see how that goes, or whatever it may be.
Yeah. For anybody listening who is in the middle of coping and figuring out how to move forward or figuring out what their pivot is, if they have to rearrange their life, I highly recommend just working with a coach, and just to make it easier. Like, you deserve to have it a little bit easier so that you can get to where you want to be. Right. Beautiful. Yeah. So tell me a little bit about how you partner with people that you coach.
Yeah, so our first conversation is usually just a lay of the land kind of conversation, like what's going on in your life, what's important to you, tends to devolve into what books do you read and what TV shows do you watch, because those are two things I'm very passionate about. But it gives me an idea of the full person. And then we usually have an overarching goal for the 6-month engagement, 3-month engagement, whatever we're doing. So like, I want to feel more confident at work, or I want a clear plan for what my next job should be. And the most exciting thing that happens is that people initially, when we talk about these things, will be like, I have no idea. I
Yeah.
don't know. And then I start asking questions and they start talking. And eventually I barely have to ask questions because they just roll and roll and roll. And suddenly, oh, wait, there are answers that they had no idea were inside them. Like I mean, I sometimes feel like a thought midwife. Like I'm just catching the thoughts and saying it's a thought. Yeah.
I love that. So that made me think of that book, Untamed by Glennon Doyle. Do you know that book?
I
There's
know it. I haven't read it yet.
Okay, there's a part in there that was like so amazing. She talks about how we all have this knowing within us,
Mhm,
and we just have to go quiet and go deep and descend down into this place of
mhm.
knowing. Um, and the answers are within us. We don't have to
Yeah.
ask other people, and in her book, she was like asking people like, should I divorce my husband? She was asking the big questions of other
Mhm,
people. And what she realized was that she actually knew the answer within herself. And so,
mhm.
like, I love that you're a thought midwife, that you can pull it out of people. But the truth is, we all know what is in our hearts and in our core, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So, one thing that I appreciate about you is your interest in mindfulness, self-compassion,
Mhm.
and tapping into some of these places where we get a little respite from the ickiness of MS.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about, how you use mindfulness and self-compassion for yourself personally or in your coaching.
Yeah. So I think in every bio I've written since entering the world of leadership coaching and leadership consulting has included the phrase Rebecca believes in feeling all of your feelings. Um,
Yeah.
and I think you and I talked about this the last time we talked, that my experience of MS communities, particularly online, is you get the I'm an MS warrior, I have MS, but it doesn't have me. Like I am fighting every day. I'm going to conquer everything. You know what? Things are hard, but they're going to get better.
Mhm.
And I think each of those thoughts like can be very useful. And I know that mindset is very useful to certain individuals. But for me, I crumble some days when I read that because I can be having just the worst day. And everybody else is, like climbing mountains and talking about how they're going to beat their MS. And I'm like, I feel beaten today.
Mhm.
On the other side, there are the people who feel beaten and seem to feel beaten every day and are doom and gloom and, oh, this will never get better. And I mean, it's a chronic illness. It's true. It may never get
Yeah.
better. But there are these two sides. And what I try to do in my life is whichever side or whatever in between ground pops up for me,
Mhm.
like I feel it. I just let myself feel it. And there's so many, like we could do a full hour on mindful self-compassion, but what I love about mindful self-compassion is that you feel it, you name it, so you can say, oh, this is grief, which is a feeling I have a lot. I don't know about you, but I do spend a good amount of time grieving what was, like what, especially like if I'm on the sidelines of a dance floor. Like I was a good dancer, and now I just grip onto my rollator and shake my butt a little, and that's what I have to offer. So if I can take a moment and say, oh, this is grief and this sucks. Man, it sucks. Um, it's not going to go away. It's not going to poof, no more grief. But I feel like if we take a moment to honor whatever we're feeling, then there's, I used to work with a meditation teacher who talked about metabolizing things.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like that is a way to start to metabolize whatever feeling it is, so that it doesn't like spread into your full body. I realize from a science perspective, the metabolize, it probably would go to your full body. But in any case, it's a way to break it down and not let it take over in an unhealthy way. Yeah, that's been so useful.
Yeah. I think everybody's, not, I shouldn't say everybody, but the initial reaction to something negative is to maybe push it away.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
I've tried to become better at just sitting with it.
Yeah.
Like sitting with the pain and just saying,
Mm-hmm.
this feels bad. It feels
Yeah.
bad. And
Mm-hmm.
giving it that space to be bad. And then I find that it's so much easier to move forward from that bad place. But I need to feel the bad before I can feel the good quicker.
Yeah, there's a wonderful Buddhist saying, which is pain is inevitable, suffering is optional. Yes. So like, you're gonna feel the pain no matter, it's just gonna happen. I mean, chronic illness, no chronic illness, MS, whatever it is, there's gonna be pain, because life is pain, princess, as Wesley says to Buttercup in The Princess Bride. I like movies as well. And so, the thing is, are you going to like really like wallow in the pain like a 14-year-old girl who just got dumped? Or, are you going to be a grown up and wallow for, a set amount of time? And I love wallowing. Like, there are some days that I will curl up on the bed and cry and cry and cry because I've just broken another glass. And I'm the worst person to live with. I'm a terrible wife. I'm a terrible stepmother, all of these things. But then I, clean myself up and realize, oh, there's also some real good shit too.
Yeah, it's just about having the perspective and incorporating all of the good and the bad, right? There's never, it's not never going to be perfect. There's not any person in the world who has a perfect life. There's pain in everybody's life.
Yeah.
I have learned. Yeah.
Yes. So, oh my God. Yes. And pain you don't see.
Yes, of course. And, one of the conversations that we've had in the past was around, the toxic over positivity, toxic negativity. And, I appreciate that you bring both sides of that. I do think that sometimes we sugarcoat everything because we want to be positive and optimistic. And you know what? Yeah, it's not always going to be that way. Like, none of us, we would all give this diagnosis away if we could. And
oh God, yes.
Yes. And as I'm working my way through your hilarious blog, which, by the way, everybody should check out, called Stumbler, not Tumblr, but Stumbler. I could just read it and go, yep, I felt all of those emotions. So it's so easy to connect with. And you are sassy. You are unapologetic. Like, you just say it like it is. I just love reading your blog. It's funny. You are so humorous. So I liked this one blog that you did where you were talking about hope versus reality. You even had like diagrams, and reading it, I was like, yes, somebody put this in a visual format where, yes, we always want to be hopeful and positive and optimistic, but that doesn't always match reality. And how do we bring those two things together, right? Because hope is healing, actually. We all need hope. But without some reality injected in there, it ends up not making sense.
I mean, reality can light the fire under your ass to get stuff done, because like my reality is, if I don't really make an effort to exercise and exercise regularly, and regularly might just be 3 times a week, and it doesn't have to be strenuous, but still I'm doing something, my body does not work as well. And my big regret, and I try not to dwell on regrets, but my big regret is when I was at the beginning of my diagnosis and shoving everything in the closet, nobody said to me, nor did I figure out for myself, hey, if you start moving your body more now and taking better care of your body now, maybe things won't get as bad down the line. And again, it's a maybe, unpredictability. We don't know what's going to happen, but at the same time, it's like, okay, so I wish I'd done this sooner, but I can control what's happening now. And the reality is, I need to exercise. I need to pay attention to the food I put in my body. I don't do a great job with that, but still,
Yeah.
These things help me, help me feel motivated to do things to improve my lot. And they also keep me from doing stupid things, like trying to walk outside without my rollator, or, you know, walking across the room with a glass. That these are bad ideas for me.
Well, like you said, you know, reality is what lights the fire and gets us going. I wouldn't have paid attention to all the things I do now if it wasn't for the diagnosis.
Oh, yeah.
I'd probably be doing, you know, really stressful work and not taking care of my body, but that's actually influenced my behavior. And like you said, like if you can just be in the now, deal with what's in front of you, and do the thing that you can do today to hopefully impact your future, like that's all we can do, right? Just
Absolutely.
overall making small positive changes, good decisions. Yeah, like you said, and we don't know how that will map out in 5-10 years from now, but it sure is worth trying. And we have a lot of scientific data that says exercising, eating, managing your stress will improve things. And we know that at the cellular level it does. So, you know, it's hard work, but you just, how are you going to show up for yourself every day, right?
Yeah. And some days you won't. And, you know, be compassionate about that too.
Yeah.
Oh, I just ate 4 slices of pizza. Doesn't mean I should eat cake as well. It just means, all right, that's the reality. Let's eat salads tomorrow, whatever it might be.
I always tell my patients, like, I don't need you to be perfect, but I do need you to be 90 to 95% perfect. Like, let's just keep it in that range. And then stuff happens, right? Like it's your kid's birthday, or you're out at a party, or, you know, whatever people are doing, you're on vacation. So it's about balance and small decisions. And I want to say that, read out this quote that I came across in your blog, where you said, so I continue to stumble forward, living into the paradox of being a regular gal and a unicorn, both mired in and more than my disease and disability. And I love what you wrote, because it really embodies like this tension between who you really are and what this disease has, you know, brought forth to you, and how you walk that line between these two things. I love that.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, that blog, I love all my blogs, just like everyone loves all their children, but that one is really close to my heart, because I do feel I work a decent amount in the diversity and inclusion space in my leadership work, consulting work. And there is always this tension of you don't want to see the other person as just their marginalized identity. But at the same time, if you don't see it, if you don't see that identity, you're not seeing the person. So there is this push and pull for me, which is like, well, don't just think of MS when you think of me, but if you don't think of MS, you're not really thinking of me. So, and I mean, I even feel that within my own sense of what my identity is.
It's all messy, right?
Yep.
None of it's
Yep.
easy. You're just every day, you just kind of figure out like, what am I doing today? How do I feel with these emotions today? So,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, thank you for being who you are, being honest and vulnerable and saying the hard things. There are some wonderful videos you've done with Dom from the MS Guy.
Yes.
I highly recommend you all go and check that out. And yeah, thank you just for showing up and showing us how, and I want to call you an ordinary person. You're not an ordinary person. You're extraordinary, but you are a person
I'm
like so many
ordinary
of
too.
us. Yeah, how a person like you walks through this MS diagnosis and finds meaning and joy on the other side.
Thank you. I walk clumsily, by the way. That's how I do it. Oh, thank you, Susan. This has really been a delight. And yeah, folks, find me through my blog, find me through Twitter. I'm always up for chatting professionally, unprofessionally, whatever it is.
Ooh,
I really like to support. Yeah, I know,
I love
unprofessional. That's most of my
unprofessionally.
chatting. Um, tried to pull it together for this, Susan. You're quite a bit more polished than I am.
I love it. I love it. No, your humor is one of your gifts. And I think people will love learning about you and reading your blog and finding you. Yeah. So please reach
Thank
out to
you.
her. She's
Yeah,
there.
do it.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Thanks.